Vice ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee and a candidate for the U.S. Senate against Ted Cruz. Thank you very much for joining us, Congressman. What does it say to you that there could be even more meetings that have yet to come to light? The White House makes it sound as if, their legal team makes it sound as if all of the meetings we've heard about, that's all we're going to get at this point. But it sounds like there may be more meetings to talk about.
You know, these most recent revelations underscore the importance of Special Counsel Mueller's investigation and ensuring its independence and his authority to follow those facts as far as they go, as high up as they go, and ensuring that we have accountability and justice. I mean, the very essence of our democracy is at stake. This thing that has distinguished us from so much of the rest of the world for the last 230 years, that explains so much of our greatness, is under attack and is open to question. And we have to be able to resolve those questions. And I have great confidence in Special Counsel Mueller, and I want to make sure that he's able to see this investigation through all the way.
And based on what you've seen so far, Congressman, do you think that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia?
They certainly tried to collude with Russia. I think that Special Counsel Mueller is still following those facts to determine how effective they were in their ability to do that. And then I hope that he's going to continue to follow those following President Trump's swearing in his attempt to obstruct justice and the investigation then ongoing from the FBI director that was later fired. So there's certainly the evidence that there was an attempt to collude with Russia.
And I want to switch to Roy Moore and what's happening with the Senate race down in Alabama, Congressman. We still have not heard President Trump really comment on Roy Moore, and the White House appears to be fumbling around for a consistent message on all of this. Let's listen to the various lines we've heard from the Trump administration officials on this in recent days.
We want the votes in the Senate to get this tax bill through.
I think you should certainly be able to infer by the fact that he has not gone down to support Roy Moore his discomfort in doing so.
If the allegations are true, he should step aside.
He thinks that the voters of Alabama should decide. I think that's probably the most common sense way to look at it. He doesn't know who to believe.
What do you make of the White House position on this, Congressman?
It's interesting. You have this extraordinary bipartisan consensus on Roy Moore in the Senate. You have the majority leader, Mitch McConnell. You have the minority leader, Chuck Schumer. And just about every single senator, even Ted Cruz, although he was one of the last to come to this conclusion, have withdrawn their support or disavowed Roy Moore and are vowing that they will not seat him or eject him from the Senate should he be elected. I think it's incredibly important that we have leadership from the very top. And I think it's important that the people of this country know that someone who, as a grown man, preyed on children cannot be elevated to one of the highest positions of public trust in the land. And I think we're still waiting for that from the White House.
And Congressman, you probably have seen this. Another woman has come forward against Senator Al Franken, saying that he grabbed her behind while they took a picture together. This was while he was a sitting U.S. Senator. In your view, what is the appropriate response at this point? Should Senator Franken step down?
You know, on this one again, members of the Senate from both parties have said that Senator Franken should be referred to the Ethics Committee. Senator Franken himself has agreed with that conclusion. He has apologized. He's acknowledged this. He's owned it. And I think that investigation should be allowed to take place. But certainly, this kind of behavior is inappropriate and unacceptable and unbecoming of a member of the U.S. Senate. And I certainly hope that this investigation is allowed to take its full course. And whatever the findings and the consequences are, I know that Senator Franken and the Senate agree that that's the best path for this to take.
And not to put you on the spot here, Congressman, why is it okay for everybody to say that Roy Moore should be gone, but not Al Franken?
You know, in the case of Roy Moore, you have someone who, as a grown man, was preying on girls in his community, sexually abusing and assaulting these girls and young women. In the case of President Trump, you have someone who was boasting about sexual assault and preying on women and using his position of power to try to dominate women physically, boasting about it, caught on a microphone. In the case of Senator Franken, you have someone who what he did was unacceptable, but I think in a different level of behavior. Unacceptable still, but the kind of sexual assault that you had President Trump brag about, the kind of predation that you saw from Roy Moore, a completely different level.
And Congressman, I want to get your reaction to the news that we heard this afternoon. The Justice Department saying it will sue to block the AT&T Time Warner merger. Are you concerned that President Trump's personal views about CNN, about the media at large, might have influenced that decision, even though the Department of Justice says that's not the case?
Yeah. I mean, I think we should begin with some genuine concerns about the increasing concentration of power and wealth in this country. And so I want to make sure that we look at all the facts of this case before we judge it. But what certainly complicates it is someone like President Trump calling the press the enemy of the people instead of the best protection against tyranny, of circulating memes on Twitter of people who have CNN logos on their heads being body slammed by wrestlers or hit by freight trains. This calls into question the motives behind this action, and we shouldn't even be having to have this conversation as serious an issue as this is and as potentially significant as this merger is. So I want to make sure that we give this case its due, read and understand all the facts, but it's too bad that President Trump, through his conduct, has forced us to even bring this question up, whether this is personally motivated on the part of the president.
Okay, Congressman, stand by. We have more news to discuss. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Designating North Korea a state sponsor of terrorism also has a military objective.
The North Korean regime must be lawful. It must end its unlawful nuclear and ballistic missile development.
The president's hot rhetoric about North Korea's nuclear weapons.
They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen.
Causing deep worry he might suddenly order a nuclear weapons launch.
We are concerned that the President of the United States is so unstable, is so volatile, has a decision-making process that is so quixotic that he might order a nuclear weapons strike that is wildly out of step with U.S. national security interests.
For 20 years,
General John Hyten, the respected four-star in charge of U.S. nuclear weapons, says if he got an illegal order from President Trump to launch nuclear weapons, he would not follow it.
I provide advice to the president. He'll tell me what to do, and if it's illegal, guess what's going to happen?
You say no.
I'm going to say, Mr. President, that's illegal. And guess what he's going to do? He's going to say, what would be legal? And we'll come up with options of a mix of capabilities to respond to whatever the situation is. And that's the way it works. It's not that complicated.
The weapon must be proportional to the threat, especially because nuclear weapons can kill tens of thousands of people.
I think the general's remarks were very forceful. They were very plain spoken, and they were very blunt. And frankly, they were also very refreshing. It's very important, I think, for the American public to understand the types of safeguards, the types of security measures we put around our nuclear arsenal and our nuclear strike capability.
Commanders continue to say the obligation is on them to not obey an illegal order.
It might surprise you if I told you I have been in situations in combat where we have had to take orders that were given to us and go back to our commanders and said, hey, the lawyers say this might not be legal to do these things.
All of this taking on more urgency because the U.S. intelligence community and the South Koreans believe it is possible sometime in 2018 the North Koreans will have the ability to launch a long-range missile with a warhead on top that could be aimed at the United States. Jim?
This is becoming a critical issue. Barbara Starr at the Pentagon, thank you very much. I want to get back to Congressman O'Rourke. Congressman, how troubling is it for you that a top general in this capacity has to answer to these fears of an illegal order of a nuclear strike? Barbara and I were reporting last week that there are members of Congress who are concerned about this, even a major U.S. NATO partner who's concerned about this. Do his remarks put you more at ease, make you more worried? What do you make?
They're really encouraging. I feel like at this time, perhaps unlike any other in our lifetimes, the institutions of this country are under significant stress. I mean, we talked about our very democracy earlier, the ballot box, the judiciary, and now our U.S. military, and how encouraging that we are more than a match for this test and for this moment. And loved hearing the general's answer. It only increases our confidence in his and those who serve under him ability to meet these challenges.
It sounded like an issue that he's thought about, though, that he's had to process. He had an answer ready to go.
Yeah, because remember, this isn't really Democrats talking about doing this or talking about the president's fitness. You have somebody who is the chairman of the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee, Senator Bob Corker, who questions the president's very fitness, his competence, his, as the chairman's, confidence in the president's ability to make these decisions. And there has to be some check on that. And the greatest check, of course, is the Constitution, which vests the power to make war on other people in the United States Congress. And it's about time that we reclaimed that power. And you're seeing a bipartisan consensus forming right now around the president's use of a first strike capability against North Korea, but also the wars that we're fighting right now in Afghanistan and Iraq, in Syria and Somalia and Yemen and Libya and all over the world. And it's about time that we once again think through what we're asking American service members to do on behalf of this country, the lives we were asking them to take and the lives that they are putting on the line and far too often losing, especially under this commander-in-chief. It's really time that Congress restore its right and the interests of the people that we represent in making sure that these wars are just, that they're necessary, that we can articulate a definition of victory and what the strategy that underlies that to achieve that. And I think right now in the wars that we're fighting, much less adding new wars like North Korea, we don't have that.
All right, Congressman Beto O'Rourke, thank you very much for joining us. We should point out we also invited Senator Ted Cruz, whose seat you're trying to win, to join us, but he declined. He's enjoying Thanksgiving this week. We hope you do as well. Thank you, Congressman. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Just ahead, a woman who says GOP Senate candidate Roy Moore molested her when she was 14.